Here's what's coming up on today's show.
The best type of life insurance policy is the one that's in effect when you die.
Boom.
That's the best one.
There it is.
Mic drop, I guess. Is that what the kids say? Mic drop.
Yeah.
There you go.
This is the Retire Happy podcast with John Iammarino, fiduciary financial advisor at Securus Financial in the San Diego area, and Thomas O'Connell, president of International Financial Advisory Group, Inc. in Rockaway, New Jersey. Together, they'll be keeping retirement happy from coast to coast.
Welcome back to another episode of the Retire Happy podcast. I'm your host on the West Coast, John Iammarino, and I am joined by my esteemed co-host on the East Coast, Tom O'Connell. Tommy, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well, John. How you doing?
Doing good. We just got back from Newport Beach. We went camping right there on the bay for a couple days, so it was
beautiful.
Good. Bree's dad was in town, and her mom joined us, and my sister and her family joined us. So we had a good group of people. How about
Such
you?
a beautiful area, Newport Beach. I know I've visited there a few times when we used to do our conferences out there at Laguna. Wow. Spectacular views, spectacular beaches, awesome stuff. We had a quiet weekend. We had SATs. So we had to do that Saturday morning and then watched a little bit of soccer, watched the U.S. unfortunately lose to the Netherlands. But the way they played, I think, bodes well for the future of the national team, and looking forward to what these kids can do as representing the U.S. Come in the next couple of World Cup cycles. So it'll be fun to watch.
Yeah, I mean, despite the loss, they had a couple big wins. So
yeah, and they were the second youngest team collectively in the tournament. I think the average age was like 23, 24 years old, something like that, which tells us that really the core guys have at least 2 more World Cups in them, which is a great thing for us.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, folks, I actually got an email, Tommy, from someone saying, hey, I can't find your last podcast. And I had referred back to our long-term care podcast. They're like, no, there's one a couple weeks later. And folks, you may have noticed that there is a little bit longer of a time period between podcasts, and we had to cancel our last podcast because the guest that we were having on, David Gaylor, he was one of our original 3 mentors. So we'll talk about what he means to us. But unfortunately, David suffered a massive stroke about an hour we found out before we were supposed to record the podcast. So,
right.
My prayers have been with David ever since. And David is one of the 3 most important people that helped me kickstart my career. And I know you go back. I go back with David, over 10 years. Tommy, you're probably pushing 30?
20. Yeah, we met right after the market crash in 2001. We were part of a field marketing organization together called United Professionals out of Scottsdale, Arizona. John Naylor was the head of that group, and he was a mentor to David and I, and a bunch of other folks that we still are very close with. But yeah, I was texting David all the way up to that Sunday night, last Sunday night, and then Monday I hadn't been checking any of my text messages because I was busy in a couple of meetings and phone calls, and then, like you just said, about an hour before, I looked at my text messages and I got the message of what had happened. So it was a little tough, right, for both of us, because David has been a very close friend of ours. He's been a mentor to both of us. He's been a friend, colleague to us. And it was only about a month ago, middle of October, that I was at his wedding down in Hilton Head. So it's just been a crazy week.
Yeah. And we were, I was going to actually reminisce with David because, again, David and Gary Reed and Rodney Harris, they owned this FMO field marketing organization that first got me. I was recruited by them early in my career. They didn't care that I was a big time advisor. They saw, what they told me was potential. And, from the first meeting, where I met you at, the group there was a group of, selfless advisors willing to help out each other. And, I remember when they eventually sold their practice, what the line was, by the purchasing firm was, we want your culture. And those guys had such an impact, from my infancy days in this business to now. Everything I've done has been predicated on what those three gentlemen taught me. And I know, Tommy and I, we're in our mastermind. We still get the ability to be coached and mentored by Gary Reed, who, now his daughters have, great firms out in the Atlanta area. But yeah, it was definitely a hard week, because you look at people that not only impact advisors' lives, and these three guys had a huge impact on hundreds of advisors, but you think about the trickle-down effect, Tommy.
Right.
The thousands of clients.
Probably tens of thousands.
Yeah. That have...
families.
Yeah. That have benefited because of the approach these three gentlemen took. And these three gentlemen, their approach was simple. If you care, you share. Don't try to, hoard all your information to yourself. If you got something that's working, share with your fellow advisors and do what's best for the client. And and we're going to interview David on his book, Income Allocation. And it's a book that Tommy and I both love. We both live by it. It's one of the ways I find, one of the ways I do income planning for my clients. And it's even, his method is called income allocation, but in the retirement designation world, it's called income flooring. So we're going to have a talk with David about that. And, hopefully, in 2023, we'll get to have that talk. But, folks, this is just another example of what life throws at you unexpectedly. And, I told Tommy before, I said, how crazy is this? For the last 2 months, we've been talking about healthcare and retirement. We've been talking about skilled nursing and just how your health can stop on a dime, whether it's a massive heart attack or in this case, a massive stroke that hit David. And David is not, he is in the prime. He's 58 years old.
Right. Same age as I am.
So,
yeah, I mean, it's a kick in the pants. Really, it wakes you up, right? Yeah. Because you're healthy, things are going great. You just got married, and I'm using him as an example. And you got a great business going on, traveling all over the country, all over the world, and you just don't know, right?
Yeah.
I mean, just literally within less than 12 hours of us, all of us texting together, to him being in the hospital, having suffered what he suffered.
Yeah.
So it just, fortunately for him, right? He has a plan that he put in place because this is what he does.
Yeah.
But we have listeners and we have clients, and hopefully not our clients, but people who come to us and ask us for information and advice, who they either don't have a plan or haven't implemented a plan. And this is what can happen.
Yeah.
I mean, just a blink of an eye.
Yep.
And the world changes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, Tommy and I are dedicated in this last podcast of 2022 to David Gaylor. Again, thank you for all you've done for us. Absolutely. And you are in our daily and nightly prayers, sir.
For sure. And it's an honor and a privilege to be a friend and to have been taught by you and to have worked with you for all these years. And he gave me the opportunity to write the foreword for his book. And his book is one of the mandatory reading assignments that I give all my new clients. So they have to read this book if they want to work with me. That's how important that book is.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we're going to do in today's podcast, 2022 has been an interesting year to say the least, right?
To say the least.
Yeah. Very tough year for the markets. And we've seen some lessons been given out, even in the positivity area, that, something that Tommy and I have preached, that you have to be able to stay the course. If you were trying to time the market and get in and get out of the market, this year was very, very difficult to do. And there were some huge down days, but they were also followed by some huge up days. But,
right.
As we're recording this, the market's down double digits this year. And, I think for a lot of investors in general, but specifically retirees, because they're a little bit more dependent on bonds, this was an environment that, Tommy, you've never even seen, right? We had market highs with zero interest rates and an aggressive interest rate rising environment and double-digit inflation.
Yeah, stagflation. That's what the definition is. Where this is different than, say, 2008 or even the 2000, 2001, 2002 market crash is that we have this inflation. Back then, we really didn't have inflation to compound the problems that we saw in the stock markets, right? So this time around, really, there was no place to hide for anybody. And I've been saying this to clients and in my talks and in my classes. There was really no place to hide, whether it was stocks, whether it was bonds with the rising interest rates, like you said, or inflation. If you stayed in cash, I mean, the last 2 years, you probably lost nearly 20% of that value.
Yeah.
When you think about it, last year, 2021 was double-digit inflation, and this year it's double-digit inflation, whether, that's what the government is telling you or not.
Whether they want to lie to us about it.
Right. So when you look at real inflation, it's probably been, 10, 12% each of the last 2 years. So there was no place to hide, really, other than some of the things that we talk about, which are the annuities and the cash value life insurance, where in the worst of markets, the worst you can do in some of those vehicles is a 0% return.
Yeah.
So, some people say, well, what about inflation? True. You're not keeping up with inflation with a 0% return, but everybody else lost money.
Yeah.
And you didn't. So,
and that's one way. Just you're diversifying your risk. We're not saying to have pull out of your money out of the markets and not be in the markets.
Absolutely,
there's a place for it, but there's diversification. There's so many different levels of diversification, and risk diversification is one of them. You need to have principal protection if you are near or in retirement. It's the foundation of your house. Going back to income allocation and the 3 methods, that's one of the first things I learned. Principal protection is the slab of your house, right? The hurricane, the tornado may come by and may rip your ceiling off, which, if you remember that analogy, Tommy, the ceiling's your stocks and your volatile investments. It may knock down a wall or two, but you always want that foundation there. So, Tommy, the first 10 or so minutes has been a little bit doom and gloom, but let's talk about in your practice. We're coming off Thanksgiving, and no matter what, we still have a lot to be thankful for. And I thank God for my blessings every day. But let's talk about some positivity. Give me a couple positive things that you've done or you've had develop in your practice in 2022.
Well, I'll tell you, one of the biggest is doing this podcast. We started this January of 2022. I was blessed or honored enough for you to have asked me back in 2021 to partner up with you to do this. And I'll tell you, this has been so much fun.
Yeah,
it really has. And it's been an awesome educational experience for me as well. There have been some of those topics that we've had guests on where I had no idea some of the stuff they were talking about. And I should have at some level, or my educational level in that area was very limited. So I'm very thankful that, one, we're friends. too, that you asked me to do this. And we've been able to, I think, create a very successful podcast with some great information without being too preachy, without being salesman, just, hey, laying it out there the way it is. And, neither one of us pull punches. So, you're always going to know how we feel or what we think about things. But I think in this day and age, people need that.
Yeah. And there's no agenda here. We're not sponsored by anyone. We won't be sponsored by anyone. Our job is just to get critical information that delivers massive value to our listeners and to our clients. And, talk about a camping trip. This is the July 2021 camping trip, down in Coronado. This is where the idea came from. And, I can't echo that, Tommy. I mean, we've had some shows that have had over 5,000 downloads. And your vision has taken this show to a whole nother level. I mean, I was, the podcast I was doing before just had me rambling for 30 minutes talking, important topics, but to be able to have your expertise and the people with during your tenure, and it speaks to the type of person you are, that guys like Ed Slott have extremely hectic schedules. And by the way, has his own podcast now with Jeffrey Levine. It's a great podcast.
Yeah, it's awesome.
They're willing to spend time on account of what your relationship with them, Tommy. So yeah, that's definitely. What else, Tommy, in your practice? Any good positives with planning or events with clients?
There's been a lot of good stuff. I mean, I've had a bunch of clients or their kids having kids, right? So families are we're seeing second and third generations coming to us for guidance, advice, just, maybe some common sense talk. So that's been great. It feels good when, what's the old saying, when a plan comes together, right? And you can see the success of generational wealth being passed down or being planned to be passed down, and knowing that you've had a part of that. Or, I've had a couple of clients who've retired this year, and knowing that, hey, what we put into place over the last 10, 20, 30 years for them has finally come to fruition, and they're meeting or exceeding all the goals, their financial goals that they had. And so for me, that's, again, it's a blessing. It's what keeps me engaged. It keeps me going in this business. My enjoyment level, every time we have a story like that, it makes me want to do more and more and more. And it's one of the big reasons why I really love what we do. So those are the kinds of things. And there's no more COVID restrictions. So now we've been able to travel again, right? So we've been able to go to some of our functions. We were in Texas, we were in Las Vegas this year, going to our conferences and seeing old friends, as well as learning again, keeping up with the type of regulatory education that we have to, or continuing education that we have to do. But that's been awesome. We had so much fun out in Las Vegas, just getting back together. We did our video out there, seeing Aaron, who helps the both of us with our social media video clips and things like that. That's been great.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, for me, I think you mentioned Aaron just now. She's been huge. I know for both of us, but, I really didn't have a lot of things going on YouTube. I just was not the social media person, but, with her knowledge and guidance to be able to start doing the bi-weekly, video series and post them on YouTube. I think my Social Security video has gone over 10,000 views. I mean, stuff I'd never even thought, that I'd be having that type of success with my YouTube channel. You mentioned, getting back to traveling again, but, Derek Gabola over at Brookstone, bringing back an old Three Mentors philosophy of mastermind groups. And then both of us being asked to, really join with 30 other advisors. And Brookstone has 1,000 advisors and 30 phenomenal planners, and being able to share, planning tips and marketing tips. And that's been huge. And, again, with COVID restrictions being lifted, my clients this has been the one thing that has been difficult this year outside of the market has been trying to get my clients in for reviews because they're making up for all the traveling, with COVID. So people being able to travel again, see their families again, that's huge. And, a big thing that I joined in one of the mastermind groups with taxation really came to fruition over the last month, Tommy, when we were doing a lot of our Roth conversions and going over our clients' tax returns. I caught multiple errors on tax returns done by CPAs and tax preparers. And, and I've told my clients and I've told the CPAs, this is not an adversarial relationship. I'm just here to be a second set of eyes. This was a really tough year for tax preparers.
Right.
We know one of them being Morrow. He just said it was like no other tax year. My CPA said the same thing. And to be able to, sit there and tell the CPAs, hey, this was a couple of things I saw, and they were thankful, right? I told them it's not to show you up. I have a concierge type of practice. With a higher net worth, I don't need to have 100, 200, 300 clients. And a lot of CPAs have that. So to be able to sit there and save thousands of tax dollars, we weren't tipping the government. We got that money back for our clients and we showed added value. And, that was a great, for my clients to really see, hey, every year I'm looking to just bring more and more value. That was definitely a positive.
Right. That's awesome. I mean, the compounded interest of those thousands of dollars you saved families, right? Maybe put somebody through college, or maybe it paid for their vacation, or it paid off of their mortgage, or what have you. I mean, what you've done for people is just incredible. And, sometimes I don't think people appreciate some of the little things that we do because they seem little at the moment. But when you look down the line, what it does or what it accomplishes for people, it can be huge. Just like in the reverse side of that, a few $1,000s these days could be devastating to people. If they had to pay that extra to the government or to the Soviet states of California or New Jersey, right? It's just, there are people right now having hard times, and that $2,000 could mean making a mortgage payment or feeding their kids.
Absolutely.
So, it's important work.
And, it's not, I know, and again, I sound like a broken record, but people tend to focus on investments because it's probably the tangible thing they can see, right? They can see the rates of return. They can see their accounts either going up or going down, but understand, and I had read this article, I shared this with some mastermind other members, and I, Tommy, you were the first one I sent it to, and we talked about this, but understand that, this profession, a planner, not a salesperson, a planner, something that Tommy and I take a lot of pride in, that there's actually 101 different ways advisors can add value for their clients. And, 15 different value adds for cash flow management. You have debt management, education planning. Then you have insurance planning, investment planning, tax planning, retirement planning, estate planning, and even more so, and this is another positive of 2022, the psychology of financial planning. And folks, 75, 85% of this game is psychological on your part. Right? Dalbar over at MIT has done 30 years worth of data that show that people make investment mistakes, planning mistakes when two things happen. Number one, they don't plan for a worst case scenario. And number two, they make mistakes in down markets. And I think another positive aspect of my practice were the proactive conversations I have with my clients. And I know, Tommy, you can emulate this because we've talked about this. That no one was panicked. Sure, people don't like losing money, and I'm not saying Tommy and I didn't lose, money for our clients. That's what the markets do. But they didn't panic. They understood the plan. They understood that we planned for years like this multiple times throughout their retirement, and they're able to stay the course.
Yeah, it's about setting expectations, part of it, right? And then us taking the emotional strain out of the decision-making process for them. So I think Dalbar will say that when people make those types of emotional decisions, those are the ones that wreak havoc in their planning. And so us holding hands and making sure we set the correct expectations helps our clients and helps the people that come to us for value and advice, including some of the professionals that we talk to, like you were talking about, right? Estate planning attorneys or CPAs that we work with in conjunction for our clients, and giving them some of the information that we have and helping them make the best decisions or make the best recommendations for the clients based on some of the information that we may have that they don't have.
Yeah. Yeah. And, it's really a good thing too for the listeners to understand that if you're a do-it-yourself investor, that, again, there's a lot more to investing, and you have to realize that just like with, with your health, right? You can go onto WebMD and search and get the answer. You can get the answer for any financial question out there. The problem is really being able to apply that knowledge into a situation that is going to be in your best interests. And, like one coach that I've had in the past saying, really opening up past the tunnel vision that a lot of people have, that, where you're only seeing maybe 30% of the picture, and really opening up to looking at the 360-degree view, and something that, we've tried to do on this podcast. And another great thing is, understand, we've talked about this before, that there's a lot of good advisors out there, a lot. Mm-hmm. And even the advisors,
we know a lot of them.
Yeah. Even the advisors who maybe some would say aren't as good. And I don't believe in tearing down other advisors for a couple of reasons. Number one, you don't know what their employer's telling them to do. Number two, you weren't in those meetings. So I always think it's unfair to critique what has been done by another advisor. But, a lot of these guys that we've met over the years, Tommy, that came from these big national firms, they're great people that were stuck in a broken system.
Yeah. When you're in that big of an organization, they don't want a rogue advisor, right? They want everybody singing from the same hymn book, so to speak, because that's the easiest way to know what everybody's doing. So you're not going to get some of the more different ways that you can approach a problem or a project, or some of the different styles or ideas that maybe, some people say out of the box. I don't like using that term, because I just say we build a bigger box for people, for them to put more things into. But that type of thing, right? So when you're in those national companies, or you're listening to possibly some radio advisors that maybe don't always know what they're talking about. There's my little dig. You're right. So, and I have my computer open in front of me, and I'm looking at this list of 101 things that a good advisor does. And, you use that analogy, the 30%. And I kind of look at it like the 10% of the iceberg that people see, and the other 90% is kind of hidden below. And I think that's where we are. And guys like David Gaylor and Gary Reed and some of the other ones that you mentioned, and some of the other ones that we've had on here as guests, like Morrow, right? And the guys from Brookstone, Dean and Mark. These are the this is what we bring to the table that I think most people are missing, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah. And, a lot of people just see Tommy and I when they come into our office. But you got to understand that we have about at least 100 different people behind the scenes, right, working for us. And kind of using a baseball analogy, if you looked at Tommy and I as the pitchers on the mound, throwing those fastballs, the planning ideas out there. We have a team behind us, whether it's our CFP planning teams, our investment analysts who are certified financial analysts at Brookstone. We have all the technology and power that Brookstone is able to leverage for us. Then we have,
tax advisors, estate planning advisors.
Yeah.
That are all professionals, licensed. This is what they do, and that's all they do. I'm looking at the tax planning portion. How many people have done podcasts about NUA?
Yeah.
I would bet dollars to donuts, probably less than 5.
Yeah. And
maybe Ed Slott.
Yeah. Well, and
right?
And I think even too, if there are podcasts out there, I think they've probably been geared more towards advisors, which is great. But, you're taking complex topics, that could definitely be over people's head.
Right. And not that people can't handle it. It's just hasn't been explained to them before or hasn't been explained to them well.
Right. Yeah. And, the other thing that I used to do and we haven't done enough of, Tommy, is respond to a mailbag. And that's something we're going to talk here. It's going to be a segue to what we're going to be doing for everyone here in 2023 with our podcast, the future of our podcast. But Tommy, I am going to ask you the question because you are probably one of the more knowledgeable life insurance people in the industry. So Frank, all the way from Cleveland, Ohio, right? So right in the middle, coast to coast, sends a question, and he asked. He says, thanks for all the great shows. Really learning a lot. Had a question about life insurance, and he goes, "What's better, term life insurance, universal life insurance, or whole life insurance?" So, Tommy, what do you say?
The best type of life insurance policy is the one that's in effect when you die.
Boom.
That's the best one.
There it is.
Mic drop, I guess. Is that what the kids say? Mic drop.
Yeah.
There you go. Look, like everything else, term life insurance, universal life insurance, and whole life insurance are tools to help you build your house, your retirement house. So they all have a place. They all have a purpose. So you have to understand what you want out of it, just like what you want out of your investments. What do you want out of your 401k? What do you want out of your Roth? So on and so forth. It's just a tool. So honestly, the best one is the one that's in force when something bad happens. But then diving into what you want out of that policy. Is it something very temporary? Is it something long lasting? Is it you trying to build tax-free money out of it? Are you trying to become your own banker? That's once you understand what you want out of that particular vehicle, then you can start hammering away at, pardon the pun, which kind fits best into what you're trying to accomplish.
Right. The specific situation. And that was very well put. And, I always tell people, listen, every investment, every financial vehicle has a pro and a con. All right.
Mm-hmm.
If it's just pros, I tell people, listen, shake the advisor's hand, say, I thought you were dead, Bernie Madoff, and get out of that room. Everything has a trade-off. So understand it, and then, and have, you need to be able to understand, the complexities. It needs to be simple for you.
Right. And we say all the time, there's no good or bad, right? It's whether it's good or bad for you.
Yeah. Appropriate or inappropriate. And,
right.
I personally, and I know, Tommy, you have life insurance on yourself. I have both. I have term and index universal. I have term.
Same here.
I have term because I got young kids, and for pennies on the dollar, I want to make sure that my wife can give them a great life.
Right.
And even if that's something I had with a friend that I was planning for, where we just got him simply term, and he didn't need much else, And, the whole goal was, listen, if something were to happen to you, you want, the legacy of leaving your daughter the ability to pay for her wedding, and just being that, having that in the moment reality that she knows that even though mom and dad or dad or mom aren't there with her physically, that day was possible because of the life insurance that was left to them, with the specific purpose of buying them a first house, or helping with the first house, or helping with the wedding or education. So
right,
yeah.
It's a pure love play.
Yeah. So we're gonna bring back the mailbag, Tommy. 2023.
Yep. Yeah, we didn't do a lot of that, so that's definitely one of the New Year's resolutions.
Yeah. And the other thing we're going to do in 2023, folks, like Tommy said, this podcast has really had a lot more success than Tommy and I really thought. And we're really thankful for, the guests that have made the show popular, Erin's help, her input, and the people over at Third Wheel Media, our producers, Walter. They've been phenomenal, and they've helped. And our last meeting with Walter, was, hey, how can we make this better? And we are actually going to, in 2023, I know Walter is developing right now, we're going to have the Retire Happy podcast website. And we want this to be interactive. So, if someone says, hey, I want to read the 100 Ways Financial Advisors Help Us. Well, there's your show notes. There's your downloads. And really just get more information out there to really help you, the listener, make the most out of your decision-making in your retirement.
Right. And we'll be able to better publicize some of the events that we do, right? When we have our college classes lined up, or when we have our estate planning workshops that we do for our clients throughout the year, it'll be a place where we'll be better able to let you folks know what we're doing, where we're doing it, when we're doing it, and how you can join us.
Right. So that's going to be a wrap on 2022, Tommy. Can you believe it? It's already over.
It felt like I was just buying my daughter Christmas presents, and now I'm online doing it all over again. So it went by quick.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm looking forward to 2023. I'm looking forward to delivering more massive value. I know we were talking about this just the other day, something that we're implementing, the 37-point checklist for our clients' tax returns. And that kind of comes off the heels of what we saw when we were doing the Roth conversions, and just being another set of eyes, and our clients knowing that we're always going to be better tomorrow than we were today. I'm thinking maybe that's a good topic for one of our very first workshops in 2023 to get everybody set up for their tax returns. Yeah. And qualified charitable distributions. We'll have some talks on that. And folks, what we're going to want from you is, if you want to hear topics, let us know. Let us know, because this is what we do this podcast for you. And, last but not least, we are definitely thankful for all the subscribers, all the people that download our podcast,
our clients, our listeners, our families who put up with us sometimes a little more than they probably need to. When we're off and doing these programs, or we're off and going to our conferences and doing our podcasts. So we're very thankful for them as well.
Yeah. And I want to wish, this is a difficult one. I want to wish my little buddy, my son, who made me a dad, a very happy birthday. 10 years old. So we are at a double
Jake
digits.
the Snake.
Yeah. So so proud of him. He's just an awesome kid. Teachers love him. Coaches love him. And these last 10 years have flown by. It's, I've seen my friends' kids grow. I've seen my nieces and nephews grow into to fine young women and children, or women and men. But to see To have a 10-year-old, it's crazy. So
Yeah.
happy birthday, buddy.
Happy birthday, Jake. Enjoy it now, because Emma is a junior in high school now. So now I'm looking at driving lessons. I'm looking at colleges. The time flies. I can remember when she was just a little peewee and I was still pushing her around in a shopping cart at ShopRite. And man, the time flies by.
Yeah. So, folks, that's a wrap. 2022. I want to wish, on behalf of everybody at the Retire Happy podcast, a very safe and Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and Happy Hanukkah. Goodbye,
Thanks,
folks.
everybody.
See you next year.
It's easy to get in touch with John and Thomas. If you're more on the West Coast, give John a call at 858-935-6210. That's 858-935-6210, or go online to GoSecurus.com. That's GoSecurus.com. If you're more of an East Coaster, then call Thomas, 973-394-0623. That's 973-394-0623, and online at internationalfinancial.com. That's internationalfinancial.com. And you can, of course, always just check the description or the show notes section of today's show for all that contact information. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcasting apps, and we'll see you next time on the Retire Happy Podcast.
Investment advisory services offered through Brookstone Capital Management, LLC BCM, a registered investment advisor. BCM, Securus Financial, and International Financial Advisory Group are independent of each other. Insurance products and services are not offered through BCM, but are offered and sold through individually licensed and appointed agents. The opinions expressed by John Iammarino, Thomas O'Connell, and guests on this show are their own and are based upon information considered reliable, although it should not be relied upon as such. Any statements or opinions are subject to change without notice. Investments involve risk and, unless otherwise stated, are not guaranteed. Past performance cannot be used as an indicator to determine future results. Any strategies mentioned may not be suitable for everyone. Information expressed does not take into account your specific situation or objectives and is not intended as recommendations appropriate for you. Before acting on any information mentioned, please consult with a qualified tax or investment advisor to determine if it is suitable for your specific situation. This program is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information with regard to the subjects covered.